Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. We are the fourth team from Class A, Islamic Economic and Finance Study Program, Indonesia University of Education. We are here to explain our topic that's governance, internal control, and core principles of Zakat in Zakat Management Organization. This video is the final project of the Islamic Sosial Finance Course with the lecturer Rida Rosida, B.Sc, M.Sc. Before we get into the video, let me introduce my team. I'm Widya Nurfadilah, and there are Muhammad Khairul Fikri and Rani Krismawati Putri. Have you ever heard the word Zakat? Yes, Zakat. If you are Muslim, of course you are familiar and know that Zakat is one of the acts of worship for Muslims to give part of their wealth to a category of mustahik. So basically, Zakat is carried out in every country globally with a Muslim population. Let's look at Indonesia as a country with the largest Muslim population. Unfortunately, Indonesia has not been able to fully optimize its zakat as a tool to drive its people-based economy, where the output produced by the institution is not following the enormous potential zakat actually has.
The lack of good management in most zakat management organizations caused that situation. Plus, the irony is that many Muslim communities in Indonesia are still anxious and hesitant to distribute their zakat funds through zakat institutions because of unfavorable issues and events in the past that still haunted them. Therefore, all these zakat institutions need a good management system.
But fortunately, the Zakat Management Organization experienced a new chapter in 2015 after ratifying the Decree of Minister Religion number 333 concerning guidelines for the granting of permits for the establishment of Zakat organization. It contains the demands and needs of Zakat organization in carrying out professional management practice. 3 instruments have been formulated that need to be applied in the operation of Zakat institution, namely governance, internal control, and the Zakat core principle. So, this breakthrough intended to overcome those problems, mainly optimizing Zakat funds and increasing professionalism in the community. Therefore, this time we will discuss those 3 instruments in detail. Let's go straight to the discussion. Let's start from governance. But what is governance? Previously, let's imagine, in a company or institution, there may be too many people for everyone to be involved in decision making. An institution needs a system and entity to handle it. Usually, there are 3 elements. First is board directors, second, managers, and third is staff. Governance is essential because of its role as a separator between ownership and control, because each party has its own goals, but not everyone can participate, right? For example, shareholders have their own primary goals by directing the company's director to achieve their goals. For instance, reducing development activities that spend a lot of funds. Still, the director also have their own purposes, and often, their plans are very different. For example, the directors are more concerned with the development of the company. Thus, governance is practiced, so the company or directors behave in such way to ensure the objectives are met. In conclusion, corporate governance is a system where the organization is directed and controlled by dividing the composition and roles of the board structure. The main goal is to determine the best decision under the company's target, but still pay attention to the stakeholder interests by following the rules and business ethic values. Thus, governance is not just compliance with regulation, but also is the key to effectiveness in bringing the company in a better direction. Next, although commercial companies exemplify in the explanation before, non-profit institutions such as Zakat organization can still apply governance system. So, what is the content of good governance principles? Furthermore, in creating governance, the Zakat organization can apply 10 principles. 5 principles are the main principle based on the decision of the Minister of State-Owned Enterprise number 117 of 2002. The 5 other principles are based on the opinion of Al-Ghazali, an Islamic economist, that the principle supposed to support the fulfillment of Sharia principles. These 10 principles make the governance system in Zakat organization that called good Sharia governance. The 10 principles are: first, participation principle. All parties are open to being involved in the Zakat institution's program or operation, both in formulating plans, distribution of funds, monitoring, and evaluation. Participation can lead to a breakthrough or innovation of an effective way to distribute Zakat funds. Example of participation such as involving mustahik as individual engaged in the program to empower mustahik through productive zakat, such as providing business capital assistance, job skill training, and assistance for business facilities and infrastructure. Moreover, involving the survey teams and other non-profit organizations such as non-governmental organizations, schools, universities, health clinics, hospitals, and other in formulating a program, so that the distribution is more targeted because these two parties have a better understanding of how the original condition in the community is. Second, rule of law principle. This aspect emphasizes Sharia compliance, where all regulation in Zakat institution must be carried out according, not misinterpreted and in the context of the Islamic law that leads to Maqasid Sharia. The rules will be the protector of all parties who ensure that there will be no fraud later in the operation. Third, responsiveness principle. There are two important aspects at this principle, where all Zakat institution activities must be responsive to all parties involved, both mustahik and mujaki. Divided to A, in terms of program implementation, Zakat institution is expected to be the most responsive party to help if there is an event related to humanitarian disaster. B, in terms of exploring the potential of Zakat, Zakat institution is expected to provide facilities that make it easier for muzaki to calculate and pay their Zakat. Furthermore, muzaki empowerment facilities is very necessary to be provided by Zakat institution. Fourth, consensus orientation and independence principle. Zakat organizations must be able to bridge various interests into the best mutual agreement for all parties, so that strategic and fundamental policies will require the involvement of other parties. For example, the institution will need experts to manage the program, such as fiqh expert and accountant. So the institution has to involve experts and cannot be handled by just ordinary people. These strategies aim to improve the performance of Zakat institution and are expected to bring more positive outcomes. Zakat organization must also remain independent without conflicting decisions from certain parties that can later cause a moral hazard. Fifth, equity or fairness principle. In implementing the program, Zakat institution must ensure fairness to all parties. The most crucial are three parties, which are A. Special relationship mustahik. It applies to families, relative, or party with a special relationship with Amil who work in the institution. Amil has to disclose the percentage and details of the fund that distributed to this kind of party in the financial statement. B. Non-relative mustahik. Distribution of Zakat fund must be committed to equality of opportunity for mustahik in a particular area without discrimination. C. Amil. Zakat institution have to guarantee the welfare of Amil as they are also included in mustahik category. 6. Effectiveness and efficiency principle. This aspect related to the reality of planning, implementation, evaluation, and follow-up strategy for a program. Zakat institution must create added value and positive results for the community or society to prove its effectiveness and efficiency in the public sector paradigm. 7. Accountability. All elements in the Zakat institution place responsibility for the public interest above personal or institutional interest by emphasizing the obligation to account and convey all its finance that refer to PSAK number 45 concerning the financial statement of non-profit organization, or PSAK number 109 regarding legis account and non-financial that widely known as procedural accountability. For example, the institution information itself and the institution performance. This aspect is obligated to maintain public trust in the institution. 8. Transparency principle. Zakat institutions require a high level of transparency, so they must maintain transparency in every decision-making, implementation, and performance report that stakeholder and the public can access as a form of accountability and discipline. With transparency, society and relevant authorities will supervise them, which will minimize the misuse of zakat funds and increase the number of people who use their services. 9. Strategic vision principle. At present day, Zakat institution is required to be an active institution that participates in empowering zakat funds for a better economy. So, Zakat institution need to have a future projection regarding the strategic plans developed and implemented to help the country increase its people-based economic strength. Last one, professionalism principle. In carrying out its activities, Zakat institution must be professional. It is emphasized that their employees must also be competent and able to carry out their duties professionally and comply with applicable regulation, both from Sharia law, internal and government, without being tempted by any prohibition. Yeah, finally, there's a lot, right? By implementing those 10 principles of good Sharia governance system in Zakat institution is an act of effort to optimize Zakat funds and show professionalism, so it will bring change that will affect the institution or company and its users. Well, let's see the result of implementing good governance in the Dompet Duafa Zakat institution. Based on research, it is known that they have implemented almost 100% of all the main principles of good governance, which are transparency, accountability, responsibility, independence, and fairness. The only problem is the lack of auditing punctuality, which is an obligation in the transparency principle. But well, even though they only apply the main principle, Dompet Duafa still proved the positive impact brought by good governance system, where they managed to become one of the largest JIS fundraising institution, where in 2012, Dompet Duafa managed to raise funds of around 150 billion and become one of the most trusted zakat institutions in Indonesia.
Now we're looking at internal controls and how to provide a business with the assurance that their operations are effective and efficient, that they have reliable reporting and follow the right laws and regulations. Every company has and needs internal controls, no exception with Zakat Management Organizations. Implementing a good internal control can increase Mujaki's trust with Zakat Management Organization. According to the Committee of Sponsoring Organization of the Tradeway Commission or JOSO, internal control is a process designed in such a way by the Board of Commissioners, Management and Personnel created to obtain adequate assurance about the achievement of organizational goals. Then, what is the component of internal control? There are 5 components by JOSO and 6 components in Zakat Management Organizations. Let's look component by JOSO before. The Committee of Sponsoring Organization has identified 5 components of internal control, which are the control environment, the organization risk assessment process, the control activities, information and communication, and the organization monitoring activities. Each of these, in turn so well, start with the control environment. That's the standard, the process, the structure that makes the actual foundation for internal control throughout the entire organization. So this includes the tone at the top. Environment is very important for setting the attitude throughout the organization toward internal control. Now, each organization is going to have some type of risk assessment process for identifying and managing any type of risk that face the business how does. This relates to auditing and the financial statement, while the company should be assessing the risk of financial statement fraud. And that's gonna have a bearing on the company. The risk assessment is completed. Control activities are put into place to help reduce the risk identified in risk assessment. For example, of the accounting manager with unrestricted access to the financial system, the risk of fraud can be mitigated with the control activity called segregation of duties. Next, we have information and communication. Having an open flow of information relevant to the company is a necessity. Employers must communicate with employees and vice versa, all within a time frame that enables it to carry out their responsibilities every business phase. Then we have monitoring, which involves the assessment of a business equality and can either be done through ongoing activities such as supervisors checking or other control activities through a separate evaluations. For Zakat organizations, internal control is very necessary because good internal control is a reflection of good managerial practices as well. The Zakat organization relies on public trust as a source of its strength. If public trust in Zakat organization collapses in the short term, it will kill the Zakat organization concern, and in the long term, it can have a negative impact on the implementation of the practice Zakat worship, which is now interestingly believed to be one of the potential fiscal instruments in supporting the achievement of national goals. There are 6 components of internal control in Zakat management organizations by Paristo. Performance evaluation system to control behavior of managers and amil in Zakat organizations. This activity is carried out by establishing regulations. Every amil to general manager must make a presence. Each amil and its activities at the beginning year propose indicators that will be carried out. These indicators have their respective assessment aspects related to technical, social, and general usability. Management meeting and determine the result. So the process information has relevance and is useful in making Zakat organization decisions. Financial information is processed from the accounting side to the internal auditor and next to the management level. Meanwhile, non-financial information is reported directly to management. The third component is physical control. Important regulations of physical control that must be considered include: every amil is prohibited from bringing inventory belonging to the Zakat organizations without permission from general manager. Every amil doesn't use the inventory belonging to the institution for personal interest without permission. Physical assets should be insured, and non-physical assets such as cash are checked regularly. And next, just fund disbursement control. There are several important points related to control activities. 1. Use the document that have a special number print on the document. 2. Separation of duties between several activities. 3. Review process. Next, fundraising control. Process control activities for fund collection relatively simple, especially if carried out with the help of information technology. Zakat organizations only need to open an account at Syariah Bank for receiving zakat, so Muzaki can directly transfer their zakat to that account. The receiving account can be linked to the accounting information system. Okay, sixth component is mustahik control and program. In distributing zakat funds, zakat organization must pay attention to two main aspects. It is the strategy for determining the mustahik to be assisted and the distribution strategy, because the perspective being carried is trying to transfer people from mustahik status to muzaki. The distribution of zakat funds should be made of programs that are future investments so that they can be appropriated for mustahik to improve their economic status. Let's look at one example of the implementation of internal control system in Dompet Duafa. The first component is controlling environment. As for the control environment, the Amil Zakat Dompet Duafa institution is have a good attitude and set the rules. Then, commit to your abilities and internal audit participation in the Amil Zakat Dompet Duafa institution by forming a system, where the system must be obeyed and understood by the director who survives. Next, the second component is risk assessment. The risk assessment carried out is control when the program changes, management regulates and establishes program policies. And then, control of new employees. If a new employee occurs, it must have the same competence. And then, change organizational structure. Okay, next, the third component is control activity. The controlling activity consists of performance evaluation system, information processing, and physical control. And then, the information and communication consists of information processing that has an impact on the sustainability of the institution, internal communication, and then external communication. Next is monitoring. Dompet Duafa needs supervision because responsibility of the institution with the director, while authority to implement it can be delegated. The last is Dompet Duafa programs. Dompet Duafa presents good programs to empower others in several aspects, including social, economic, education, health, and religion. Dompet Duafa implements the internal control component properly. At the same time, the fulfillment of the requirements of the Amil Zakat institution need to be refined, such as coordination with business, so that Dompet Duafa can be received with recommendation from the national level. Improvement of the internal control component and commitment in practice so as to gain full trust for Mujaki. Meanwhile, improvement in internal control supervision and related rules need competent resources.
Now, let's talk about the standard of zakat management in zakat institutions. Zakat Institutions Management Standard refers to Zakat Core Principle. Zakat Core Principle is a document content framework and operational standard of zakat management. At first, this document initiated by Badan Amil Zakat Nasional. After that, Badan Amil Zakat Nasional cooperate with Bank Indonesia, Islamic Research and Training Institute, and Islamic Development Bank. It also supported by other countries, such as Malaysia, Saudi Arabia, and other countries that incorporated an international working group on Zakat Principles. The idea of Zakat Core Principles inspired from Basel Core Principles. Basel Core Principles is a general standard in the bank that has been recognized internationally. The objective of Zakat Core Principles is to improve Zakat governance and to optimize Zakat potential. Then, what is the content of Zakat Core Principles? Zakat Core Principles contain 6 main aspects with 18 principles. The first aspect is institutional law. Consists of 3 principles: objective independence and power, permissible activities, and licensing criteria. Mainly, the principles in this aspect discuss about legal stipulation, including framework to licensing, and regulation that explain clearly. So, there is no misinterpret of the rules, and the activities of zakat institution can operate according to regulations. The second aspect is zakat supervision. There are 3 principles in this aspect: zakat supervisory approach, zakat supervisory techniques and tools, and zakat supervisory reporting. This aspect talking about supervisory method, techniques, instruments, and statement of zakat management performed by zakat supervisors. Instruments that used in this process must be validated and using professional resources. The report is based on the International Reporting Standard of PSAK number 109. Next to the third aspect. The third aspect is zakat governance, including 2 principles: corrective and sanctioning powers of zakat supervisor and good amil governance. This aspect talking about how zakat institutions do their activities according to good amil governance. If there is any irrelevant activities, punishment can be given to the zakat institutions, such as revocation of the zakat institution permit. The fourth aspect is collection and distribution management. This aspect including 2 principles: collection management and disbursement management. Zakat institutions have a role as intermediary institutions between zakat fund collected from muzaki to mustahik. Therefore, in this aspect, talking about the zakat institutions must have adequate management to distribute and to manage zakat funds. Next to the fifth aspect. The fifth aspect is risk management. Same as financial institutions and companies, zakat institutions also have risks. So, it is important for zakat institutions to have ability to minimize the risk they have. On this fifth aspect, the risk of zakat institution explained in 4 principles: country and transfer risk, reputation and muzaki loss risk, disbursement risk, and operational risk. The last aspect of zakat core principles is audit and transparency, including 4 principles: Sharia control and internal audit, financial reporting and external audit, disclosure and transparency, and abuse of zakat services. Zakat institutions that manage zakat fund collected from people must do their activities according to Sharia rules. So, audits from both external and internal zakat institutions is needed to make sure where the zakat funds distributed. In addition, transparency to the public can improve the public trust of zakat institutions. In Indonesia, implementation of zakat core principles measured using index implementation zakat core principle. This index developed by Badan Amil Zakat Nasional and Bank Indonesia and still on pilot project. Now, let's move on to the practice of zakat core principles in real situation. This example only take one from 18 Zakat Core Principles and the practice in one of Zakat institutions in Indonesia. In this case, we use one of Zakat Core Principles that already implemented in Lembaga Amil Zakat Muhammadiyah Solo. Lembaga Amil Zakat Muhammadiyah Solo has applied this principle with direct monitoring by supervisors from every tier. Zakat supervisors have reported and evaluated the management of Lembaga Amil Zakat Muhammadiyah Solo. Also, Lembaga Amil Zakat Muhammadiyah Solo has guided and trained by Zakat supervisors to make sure the management operates effectively. From this example, we can find out that Lembaga Amil Zakat Muhammadiyah Solo has implemented good Amil governance based on Zakat Core Principles. Thank you so much for your interest and attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.